Hello, and thanks for joining us. Today, we would like to talk about nationalism versus globalization because that is a clash, I would say, of two major systems. I think it's the clash of our times of two major systems. And just have a general talk about how this flows out and how we can mitigate it, really. So,
Who wants to start first?
anyone, just say when.
Cosmo, what do you think?
Okay. So from my point of view, I think nationalism is a very interesting thing because it came about it's only like a few centuries ago, like 17th century. I don't know, my history is not very good. Before that, we didn't have this notion of nations. Or we did, but we had like, we think we belong to like an ethnic group or like the same kind of people with this common practice or language and stuff like that, and borderlines and things like that were not so clear cut. And whether or not people belong to a nation or not is not so clear cut because they feel like they're in more of a local ethnicity.
Oh yeah,
Like for
very
example, the one example I can think about is Spain and the Catalan people. Catalan, always thought that they should be their own country because they felt like culturally they're different enough. So I think nationalism is really interesting because like it's an artificial kind of like division of border and people and language and culture and stuff like that. But it became a kind of like a geopolitical reality in the recent centuries. But now it's challenged by globalization where a lot of things transcend borders and language and culture and stuff like that. And people, we read the same news, we get to know the same products and things that are about around the world these days, which is a great thing. I think it's progress. But at the same time, we still retain this idea of borders and nations. So how do they play out with each other? That would be very interesting.
Well, Cosmo, those are really good points. I think you nailed it. I think we like to belong to a community, right? So I think in smaller groups as an ethnicity or any name you put it, we just want to belong to a group. And I think perhaps somehow people started using this need to belong in a sense of material gain. We have this piece of land, and because we are from this piece of land, we are so much better than the people on that piece of land. People started to use it for their own gain, and because it sounds so good to somebody, oh yeah, this group is much better than that group, and people started to buy into this. And of course, I think the idea of working together, it's just so strong and has so many advantages that globalization, of course, it took off, and now it's challenging the whole idea of nationalism. And people, I guess it is hard to come to terms with it because you do want to belong to what you grew up with, but at the same time, you don't want to say no to all the advantages that globalization brings. So I guess it's a bit of a struggle for us in general, and I think we will figure out how to deal with it, hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully. Well, I think, actually, Cosmo, I think you touched on it in our very first video where you were saying people like the benefits of globalization, but they don't like the downsides of it, which are or should be open borders and all the rest of it. But I personally think that a lot of nationalism is politically driven by politicians. They kind of incite the masses to their own ends.
Yes, very true.
And I think a lot of egregious things have been enforced because of patriotism, where they and then so then that's a fear-based agenda as well, right? Or fear inciting agenda simply for political maneuvering or things like that. And so I think actually a piece of a poem has been running through my head the last couple of days as it happens, and it's the start of a poem, I don't remember what it was, but it goes, breathes there a man with soul so dead that never to himself has said, this is my land, my native land. It's really cool, right, actually? But I think that kind of feeling of home is a good thing. I mean, right? There are places on this planet that we belong to. We just feel in our bones.
Yeah.
And that is very different from nationalism, though, I think. It's because if something is your home, that doesn't preclude it from being someone else's home, right?
Yeah, very true.
So
Even if they look different from you.
Totally.
Sorry to cut you.
No. And like you were saying, nationalism is then like an artificial construct
Yeah.
Yes.
for a set of purposes. And I think we are seeing in the world this like blind almost following of nations, like egos, really.
Yeah,
That's what comes right
That
down
is
to.
true. In its sense, it is that.
Yeah, and the concept of actually what is home, as that poem says, this is my land, it's indicating a soul kind of surge, right? A soul urge. That is lost in this boundary debate, I feel.
Yeah.
Because home is really cliche, but home is where the heart is. And then people can find their heart, they can find their community. Like we were saying, it transcends
in different
in our time because of, the internet, etc. And just trade.
That's
and
very true. Sometimes you can find home even online with a community of people.
That you don't have to live
it doesn't
physically
have to
together
be a
with.
physical home.
Yeah.
No, and the world is small with aircraft and whatnot.
Yeah.
Time travel,
Exactly.
traveling time is what maybe we'll have time travel as well.
Right.
And that would smash all sorts of things.
Oh wow, that would be something.
Yes,
That would
yes,
be
yes.
amazing.
So this clash, which really shouldn't be a clash, but it is, and it's a serious one. It wants looking at in those terms, I think, because and then the other reason nationalism exists is because of systems, of course, but societal systems. So systems of welfare, systems of taxation, who's paying taxes, who isn't, and so, and immigration, and this whole haves, have-nots. I have this, I don't want to share. And I think those are the
That
pivot
could
points.
be exactly. And I think if we ever do not have borders, we need to have a system that plays well into these kind of systems, because in the end these are there to make sure everybody has a certain quality of life.
Yeah, so the idea of nationalism is, it's not that far from like when we had tribes and say, oh, this is my land, I'm gonna protect our own kin from like, outsiders from taking our things and stuff like that. It just like it became like a national level where instead of tribes, instead of villages, towns and stuff like that, it's a nation, and it's a artificial concept, as we talked about it. But at the time when nationalism came about, size mattered, right? If the bigger the nation, like maybe you can assert more kind of control and influence on other countries, and you can protect your own interests more, and then even expand, like, and then the whole idea of like colonialism, like it's like nation but aggressive, like colonizing other places but keeping their own national interests in a way. So it was really relevant at the time, and it helped kind of countries and people grow and prosper at the expense of other people, of course.
That's very true. That's the thing. It's so unhealthy. It stemmed from this very unhealthy need to have more. I should have more, otherwise they will you know, like you fear that you will not have enough.
Right.
Which is not true. There's so much to go around in the world.
Yes, and globalization kind of like, I think it's very interesting is that if you, like you said, if you feel like you belong to a group, you don't have to live next to that person. You don't have to even be in the same country, or you can like implement systems virtually across borders. So if, like, for example, if I feel like I'm what do you call that, the anonymous hackers, I can join that, you know, and it's cross border, it's international, and I can abide by their rules, not the rules of any other government. So technology and globalization kind of like allow that to happen. You have, like, theoretically, you can have your own virtual
Pick your
country
own community.
or whatever
Yeah, exactly.
online, and you can have like a very different existence than being a citizen in a place. So it's very interesting that this notion of borders and the notion of land, you know, or even like ethnicity or culture don't matter as much in our, I don't know, vacation of allegiance, I don't know, of some kind. So like, what would be the countries of the future be like? I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Though I will modify your point a little bit in that it is not so much as mattering, it's not relevant as much, but it does matter. It matters a hell of a lot, which is why we're seeing the conflict we are seeing, and we're seeing the consequences that we are seeing. And I would love to have that topic about the countries of the future.
That is a great topic.
And our utopia, right? But for now, if we look at the arguments, like the individuals, because nationalism and the outcry that we're seeing is really, it's something in each individual, right, that's coming out. And to me, it's interesting why someone would buy into an external entity that may or may not have their best interests at heart. Why would they buy into something like this? And
well, surely they believe that what this external entity is doing is for their benefit. And you know, then you see all kinds of marketing campaigns and stuff like that actually tells people, you know, if you vote for, say, this, then you're gonna get all of these benefits. And people believe this. Perhaps they don't have the right information to make a critical decision. So then they say, okay, you're gonna give me this, you're the guy. But then people, you know, turn back on their words. So I think people need to understand the consequences of their agreeing with someone as well. And they've in the past, I think people have gained a lot from nationalism. Some people have, some people have not. But basically, you get this sense of belonging, but you also get some materialistic stuff. And people expect that to happen, but they don't understand that the world has changed.
Exactly.
And if you shut it off to the rest of the world, then you're the one who has to produce these things, and then people are not willing to do that because they're not used to it anymore.
Yes. Like the notion of nationalism is so much tied to this notion of border and walling people out and keeping people in some way, and identifying who's out and who's in. Yeah, but globalization just breaks all of those apart.
Yeah, and it's scary because then you're trusting other cultures, other people, other systems, which is very scary. You'd rather stay with something that's hurting you, but it's familiar, very unhealthy.
Which the whole Brexit thing was about.
Very unhealthy, leaning towards familiarity than, opening up to something good.
Is that realistic in this day of day and age to expect that you can still war things out? Because obviously, case in point, China is doing that. They actually, there's a new trend in China to state your allegiance to the Chinese policies. For example, at the time of this recording, the South Sea dispute in China, every netizen and everybody in China, when they get online, they have to state that they support this. Otherwise, they would get basically a witch hunt. If you don't say it out loud that you support the, Chinese policy in the South Seas, then you are a traitor, basically.
Oh.
So this is like extreme
The
nationalism.
Chinese government is just something else.
Yes. It's a good sort of example of extreme nationalism, and its basis is basically China. Its basis is that China is a locked country. You can't access the internet freely and access information outside of the border.
Oh, yeah.
So they can still, like, I think it's very interesting, like how nationalism is so tightly tied to locking things in. And if you don't have that anymore, then the notion of nation would dissipate or like would diminish in significance. But so there are countries in the world who are still trying to hold on to this very, I feel like it's a very 19th and 20th century of notion of nationalism, and they're trying to basically retain, like, freeze time.
That's what they're doing.
But so now the funny thing is that across the globe and different countries, there are like schisms in what constitutes nationalism, right? I mean, that's why you're having all these referendums and votes and stuff like that, which is why this discussion is so interesting. What really is nationalism? What constitutes it?
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's a political process, because basically people define their nationalism based on the political parties they belong to. And that's a whole construct, that's just a construct. It's just what somebody said. What somebody came up with, political analysts came up with a formula of how best to capture the imagination of the public. And so, in short, for me, it's all a nonsense. It's just, and this kind of discussion is so critical, because I think people really need to wake up and smell the coffee and ask, really, what is their native land to themselves? What does it mean? And for me, whenever someone's possessive about something, it means they are deeply insecure.
That they might lose this thing, or that they don't deserve it
or
in some way.
Who knows why they might be just insecure. And so I think the question of our times is how to remove insecurity. How can people feel secure? And I think it's a relevant...
that's the right way to look at it.
And I think it's a relevant fear, because yes, of course you want a roof over your head, you want to be able to pay your bills. And I think governments are not doing a good job, and maybe deliberately so, because of political means or ends. They're not doing a good job of securing people.
That's the dilemma right there. It's a really excellent point that a lot of people subscribe to the idea of kind of like nationalism. What is the noun? Patriotic. Yes, because it feels like the nation would protect them and give them security and safety. If they can get security and safety in other ways, rather than just blindly kind of like agreeing with any national policy and stuff like that, supporting basically the regime, your government blindly, then they don't need to. Nationalism is not useful for them in that case.
That is true.
But the thing is, but the thing is, like, for the government, it might be good to like just stir up emotions. A lot of times it's emotions rather than rational thinking of patriotism.
For sure, because
so that they could get like loyalty from the people without question, and they could kind of run the show however they want. So it's a trade-off. It's a very wicked to me trade-off.
Yes, it's evil, and it confuses people. How suppose a tragedy hits, how do you know if it's external forces or internal forces trying to gain loyalty? Who is hurting us, basically? How do you know? How do you decipher?
It's all confused. It's ridiculous.
It's evil and just so scary.
Yeah, it's like, look at the Syrian like crisis. Like, what happens in it's not a relatively not a very big country in the Middle East. It spills like has consequences, spills over all over Europe and the rest of the world, and we all felt it, and we all like suffer from the consequences, even like for us in Hong Kong. And so I would kind of question, like, okay, if you wall people out and keep people in, what kind of security are you really guaranteeing people? You have this kind of terrorist kind of attacks in Paris, in all these, like the Middle East and Turkey as well, like in the world, like every other week, it feels like now, like every month or something like that.
Scary.
And then you still go to the Syria and those countries and bomb them, and the more you bomb them, the more hatred it's created, and the more like ripple effect it's coming out. So, you know, using the thinking of nations to solve kind of problems that it's now global, it's actually very outdated, and actually it's counterproductive. But the thing is, the more we cling on to the nationalism idea, the more we're not solving the problem.
Yeah, actually, Cosmo, that is such a great point. We think in our head that the enemy is outside. I need to go and bomb the enemy. You know, but it's not like that. They're human beings. We're human beings. We need to help them. You know, they are perhaps in a state where they are not as informed as us, so we need to bring them up with us. It's like, say you have a friend and this friend doesn't have the same resources as you're not gonna, I don't know, like, you know, tell them to just
brush them off.
Exactly. Because that could backfire. What if this person turns into, I don't know, a thief, steals from you in the end, right?
Yes.
It could hurt you. So you have the resources, you can easily help this person rather than later try to clean up, you know, a big mess.
Yes. You know, this is the ultimate irony, because people are so afraid that they block, they wall, but in fact, globalization makes that virtually impossible. I mean, the world is so porous. Porous is the word. And the more you clamp down, it's like trying to hold water in a sieve, right? It just runs out and it runs out. And the running out has consequences that are exponential now, you know? It's just like day on day we see it. So it's really ironic. It's like trying to catch an idea.
Yes.
You can't catch an idea.
Catch an idea, exactly.
You can't bomb hate our people.
No. In fact, you're probably bombing hate into
people. Yes, exactly.
You know, you're giving them reasons to hate you more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in this sense of nationalism is actually doing us a disservice.
Totally.
Yes. But the thing is, like, can we like change our mindset enough so that we can recognize this kind of actually illogic that, you know, if in walling people out, you're creating more conflict and you're creating more problem, and kind of accept a more globalized world where maybe we still have borders, like for the sake of taxation and infrastructure and whatever kind of administrative reasons, but we recognize that the world is actually globalized, and you can't say just because you lock down your country you can keep your jobs necessarily. You can you know, protect your own industry. Like, the world it has evolved. So can we evolve as well, and then have policies that is actually taking globalization into account rather than trying to like block it.
Definitely. I think.
Hey, so because we are running out of time,
we should talk about the courses of action that could help.
Absolutely. I think this is a great topic to think, what can the individual do?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Nationalism it might be like a nationwide feeling, but actually it comprises
it's strongly
one's thinking and each one. So what can the individual do to mitigate this clash, really? And just mitigate it for themselves. And if each of us can mitigate it for ourselves, then voila, we've mitigated it, period.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is true.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I have this idea, I always have this idea. And it boils down to security. If we can make ourselves so secure, our finances, our roof over our head, our meals, just self-sufficient, in short, then we completely interfere, or run interference between the government message of why we should be afraid. They'll take our jobs, they'll take that's cut.
Yes.
And if we can each stop relying on the things that we rely on, the things we take for granted, because actually those can go not just from from nationalism, from refugees coming, those could just go.
Yeah, exactly.
From
natural
the
disaster
stock market crashing,
yeah, for sure.
There are gazillion external forces out there. I mean, this is just the one thing that's being used to create the walls within us. And I think just make your own internal wall and fortification, make your life secure.
That is true.
So that would be my A1 action plan.
Exactly. I do agree. There was a vision behind nationalism, and now I guess globalization is lacking that vision. There are so many advantages to globalization, and there are a few little tiny bit disadvantages. And what I guess governments or whoever does is stretch out these disadvantages and then just put it over the public's, then the vision that they have, it's a scary one. You don't want to plunge into this. So I think what we need to do is develop a vision for ourselves and, see the advantages of globalization, educate ourselves on this. And I think media plays a big role in this too. I think media can also help in building this vision, and individually we can do this for ourselves, definitely, but even as a whole, I think what you tell your family, what they know, they tell their friends, and it's like a ripple effect. People just need to have a vision that supports their security. Exactly. They should not be blinded by fear, basically.
Yeah, I have a similar notion. I think individually, if we have like an honest assessment of what we can really do with a border and a wall, and what we can't do with it. For example, if you build that wall in between the US and Mexico, it's gonna be so ineffective in blocking out illegal immigration, but it's gonna cost you a lot of money, and it's gonna distract the true issue that maybe the lack of opportunities and jobs in your own country is because of other reasons, and it distracts you from solving the problem. Like I think individuals need to have this honest assessment of what can a wall really do for you anymore. If it can't, then you need to be realistic and just say we need to solve this problem of like job insecurity or other things like lack of resources or whatever in a different way, other than relying on the border. So, and then you need to bring it to your representatives and then kind of voice it out so that politicians don't use this fear of blocking people out for their own gain, while not really actually gaining any grounds in solving those problems. So if anybody could do that, then
Yes.
I think I think we have to start from ourselves. No one will do this for us, and it comes from within, and it will spread out, and hopefully governments will start to see this too.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes. And I find it interesting. We should have actually gone this way.
Yes.
Because it starts there first, to sift the truth from your wheat from the chaff, and find really what is the issue behind what is touted as nationalism.
Right.
And then once you have those issues clear in your own head, you can create the vision, and with that vision you can make your life secure.
Definitely.
Cool. So
Great.
those are our three
I love
actions.
how we
Question,
stringed it together.
vision, security.
Yes.
So thank you for watching.
Thank you.
We'll be back soon.
Okay. my name is Cosmo, and I'm a user experience designer. I like to use design thinking to promote social good, and I think conversations like this is a great way to start rethinking our world. That's why I'm doing this.
Hello, my name is Gazala. I'm a big believer in providing people with the right tools to expand their perspective. I'm doing this to bring awareness to us collectively.
Hi, my name is Penny, and I really think the conversations that we have with each other in this world could do with a major upgrade. So that's the reason I'm doing this.